important is communications in project management? How important is communications in project management? Oh my goodness, where to start? Well, a couple of things that I want you to be aware of. Communications in project management have a lot of similarities with communications everywhere else that you have to do it. But there are also some very specific areas where communications in a project management environment are a little bit different. So what we're going to do is we're going to sort of just go point by point. What is it that makes communications and project management so important to you? And we're going to include a couple of suggestions of things to do. And sometimes it's really handy to know what not to do. So we'll probably have a few comments about that as well. Now, there is something about project environments that a lot of people are not actually clear about when they're outside of that environment. But you and I both know that projects are a temporary state of affairs. They have a specific beginning, a specific end, and a specific goal in mind that they're supposed to help our clients achieve. But honestly, sometimes one of the things that we're going to have to figure out is what it is that our clients want to achieve. And then there's that pesky thing about requirements. Sometimes we're clear on them, sometimes not so much. All in all, though, because of the looming deadline in project communications, there's always a slightly different sense of urgency that carries on all through the life cycle of the project. There's also a sense of having to do something that frequently outside of projects, we don't actually do that formally. And that is to figure out who it is that we need to make sure we communicate with. A stakeholder analysis is going to be critical about this. Now, I have to tell you, I was a little nervous about sharing this story, but I thought about it, and the point that it makes is really, really powerful. There's something else about communications and project management, and that is it offers a great opportunity to delegate. Oh, I know. For some people, that's really, really tough. And I'm one of those people. So as I first started in my project management career, I had projects that had actually a pretty small pool of stakeholders that we needed to be in constant communication with. Then one day I got my first project and it had 35 key stakeholders that we had to maintain communications with, that we had to keep updated. And of course, I was so used to doing the whole thing myself that I thought that that was the way it would work best next. And about a month into the project, I realized I was spending all my time working with the key stakeholders on the outside of the team and not enough time working with the key stakeholders that were inside of the team. And here's what I learned. There just might be a few folks on your team that have better relationships with a couple of your key stakeholders than you do, or relationships of longer standing than you do. This becomes a perfect opportunity, not just to delegate to them because it doesn't make sense for you to try to do everything yourself, but also to delegate to them to start growing their project leadership. It's a small thing, but really important. So step one of the things that we think you should do. Well, step one has to do with knowing who it is that you're supposed to be communicating with to begin with. Make sure that you are very, very clear about who needs to know what in your stakeholder community. This becomes important because if you don't deliver the message to these people that they are particularly concerned about, Or if you deliver it in such a way that makes it tough for them to digest, then you start to erode the level of trust that you have with that individual. And the amount of trust that you have is an absolute indicator of how sound, how strong your relationship is with that stakeholder. But you can't know that until you're very clear about who the stakeholders are, what it is they care about, and how do they like to be communicated with? I have one right now who, to my surprise, actually prefers to get a quick text. It's kind of a new one on me, but there you go. The second thing is to determine what their positions are and if there's anybody besides you who could possibly manage the day-to-day communications with that particular stakeholder. Now, this becomes important because it's not delegating 100% of the responsibility for communications with that stakeholder. It's making sure that on a day-to-day basis, that individual on your team is responsible for keeping that stakeholder updated. You are still, as the project manager, the project leader, you're still ultimately the one who's going to be responsible for the health of the relationship between your team and that particular stakeholder. But remember, delegating does a couple of very important things for you if you can do it. And you can't do it unless you actually know enough about the stakeholders that you need to communicate with and the people that your team are familiar with. This not only frees up time for you, but it also begins the process of helping your team members grow their capacity for project leadership. The last thing I'm going to suggest is that you document. Who are the stakeholders? What do they care about? How do they like to prefer to be communicated with? And who's handling that on a day-to-day basis? Now, you also want to document how often they want to be communicated with and, as possible, where they stand on the project. Are they supporters? Awesome. Not so much? Oof, we might have to take a strategy into play to make sure that we take care of that. Or do they want to be kept informed, but honestly, they don't have any feelings about the project one way or the other? So that means that all we need to do is make sure that those people don't move to someone who would love to see what they can do to stop your project. You see, communications are so important in project management that many training organizations, including mine, have whole courses dedicated to the basics of communication and also to some of the more advanced topics within communication that as project leaders, you need to be responsible for understanding. Things like public speaking, negotiations, influencing without authority, and conflict resolution. They're all part of communications, and they are all massive parts of what you as a project manager, as a project leader, are responsible for. It's what makes your project success that much more likely, or that much less likely. So if you got something helpful hint or a nugget out of this video, please press the like button. If you want to know when the next video on communications or any other project leadership topic comes up, please subscribe to this channel. We'd love to see you. Thanks for joining us.